Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea reports dozens more cases of COVID-19, many of them among sailors on a Russian ship docked in Busan. Also, the government will soon announce a new system for social distancing with 3 levels depending on the severity of the outbreak. The credit rating agency Moody's lowers its forecast for economic growth this year in the G20 countries to minus 4.6%. For Korea, though, it still projects a relatively high growth rate of minus 0.5%. And the number of households in South Korea with just one person in them rises to an all-time high of more than 6 million. That's almost 1/3 of all households in the country. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea has confirmed a COVID-19 cluster infection on a Russian ship docked in the southeastern city of Busan. 16 Russian sailors have tested positive so far. More than 150 people at the port came into contact with them and are now being tested. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
This virus-hit Russian vessel entered Kamcheon port in the southeastern city of Busan on Sunday. The captain was confirmed to have COVID-19, after which the Busan National Quarantine Station tested all the sailors aboard. Of 21 people, all but 5 are confirmed positive as of Tuesday. They're all Russian nationals.
The other 5 could be retested if they start showing symptoms.
Some 160 people came in contact with the patients, most of whom are local port union workers who have been helping to unload cargo and repair the ship. The city government has quarantined them and will carry out testing. They will start with 34 workers who had the closest contact with the infected sailors. In the meantime, the confirmed patients have been quarantined in a separate section inside the boat and will be transported to Busan Medical Center on Tuesday. It is said the sailors and workers had not been taking proper virus prevention measures like wearing face masks, prompting concerns about even more infections sprouting up. This new cluster has again put South Korean health authorities on high alert amid continuing group infections outside Seoul and the possibility of a glaring loophole in port quarantine. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
To make it easier for the South Korean public to understand what precautions they should take to prevent the spread of COVID-19, the government plans to create 3 distinct levels of social distancing measures based on the day-to-day severity of the outbreak. Kim Da-mi has the details.
South Korea confirmed 46 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday. 30 of those new cases were imported. That's nearly double the number of local transmissions. And it's the first time in over a month that the number of imported cases has exceeded local ones. 16 new cases originated from recent cluster infections in the Seoul metropolitan area. 1 additional death was reported on Tuesday. The death toll now stands at 281. With the nation's caseload rising, the South Korean government will soon create 3 distinct levels of social distancing. Previously, South Korea had introduced various types of social distancing measures, such as enhanced social distancing and distancing in daily life. But there was a little difference among them. The new levels will be based on factors such as the daily number of confirmed cases, number of new cluster infections, and the ratio of silent transmissions. In addition, starting Tuesday evening, 4 additional so-called high-risk facilities must follow strict virus prevention measures. Those places include door-to-door sales businesses, buffet restaurants, distribution centers, and academies with more than 300 people.
All visitors and workers at the 4 designated places must keep track of visitors using QR codes and wear personal protective equipment, like masks.
Earlier this month, the government named 8 other types of places as high-risk COVID-19 facilities, including singing rooms and nightclubs. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
The global credit rating agency Moody's has lowered its economic growth forecast for the G20 countries this year to minus 4.6%. This is 0.6 of a percentage point lower than the agency's previous forecast in April. The decline was led by countries in Europe, including France and Italy, where outbreaks of COVID-19 have been severe. As for South Korea, though, Moody's kept its growth outlook at minus 0.5%, which is the highest rate among the developed countries. South Korea's producer prices stabilized in May following the injection of COVID-19 relief funds. The Bank of Korea says its production price index came to 101.98, ending 3 consecutive months of on-month declines. The prices of agricultural products rose 2.7% due to high demand following the release of government financial aid. But the prices of industrial products like chemicals and computers fell 0.2%. President Moon Jae-in is pressuring lawmakers to quickly pass the government's $30 billion extra budget proposal that'll be used to tackle the COVID-19 crisis. He was speaking Tuesday at a meeting about quarantine measures in the Seoul metropolitan area, where sporadic infections continue to pop up. He said a delay in the bill will only increase people's suffering and hinder the economic recovery.
정부가 제출한 주경안에 대한 국회 심의가 20일째 착수조차 못하고 있습니다. 고용 충격으로 일자리를 잃었거나 이럴 위험에 처해 있는 국민들, 자금난을 겪으며 도산 위기에 처한 중소상공인들과 기업들, 경제 위기로 더 힘겨운 저소득층과 취약계층에게 실기하지 않는 지원이 절실합니다.
The president also called for continued efforts among quarantine authorities and local governments, saying the country is at a crucial moment. President Moon also called for cooperation from the people, acknowledging the prolonged situation and the heat wave. However, he reassured the public that the government has the situation under control. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for coming on.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, U.S. stocks overnight, despite fears of a second wave of the virus, closed higher. The Nasdaq in particular is at a new all-time high. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, on Monday, the Dow Jones gained 0.6%, and S&P also was up 0.7%. The Nasdaq jumped 1.1% to hit the record high numbers as it closed. There's continuation of uncertainty in regards to the new coronavirus infections in several of the United States. And Texas governor declared that the coronavirus spreading is at an unacceptable rate, warning that additional measures has to be there in order to contain the spread of virus. Despite all these concerns, though, we saw quite significant rise. And also, even today, the futures market seems to be rebounding quite rapidly at this point. There was some confusion regarding the comments from the trade advisor, Pierre Navarro, saying that the deal was over between U.S. and China. But the President Trump tweeted that the trade deal between U.S. and China is fully intact. And because of this, the market futures seems to be going up by about 0.5%. Also, a lot of the news coming out from Europe is indicating that the manufacturing and economic activities and the PMI numbers are all coming better than expected because of continuation of quite strong boosting measures that was done by European countries. So clearly, there's a signals of the concern about coronavirus versus continuation of recovery due to the strong boosting measures, and that is kind of pulling the market in each direction. All in all, it seems that the winner is that the market wants to go up further with these kind of news that the economy is recovering.
Well, Monday's gain on Wall Street driving Korean stocks higher, too. What happened today in the local markets?
Local market today, as the U.S. market futures fell quite sharply to around minus 1.5% during the day. That resulted into Kospi started with strong numbers, but it fell to minus 0.8% as low as that, and then recovered at the end with the news coming from the U.S. saying that the deals between U.S. and China regarding the trade deal is still remain intact, and that has resulted into the market recovering, and the Kospi and Kosdaq both closed up by 0.21%. Also in Korea, there's concern about the new coronavirus spread. The infection rate seems to be rising. On a daily basis, at least 50 people plus are adding to the new infections. And if that kind of trend continues, then we're going to see maybe on a daily basis as high as 800, which was the previous peak of the new additional patients. If that trend continues, then that's clearly a concern. The Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon have vowed to tighten the quarantine measures on Monday, citing that these new patient increases are quite alarming. And because of that, markets were kind of volatile. But U.S. market has more impact to the Korean market, and U.S. market being resilient and very strong, affecting positively on Korean equity market as well.
Right. Well, we also see Korea's producer prices in May were flat. That's actually the first time in 4 months that they haven't fallen. So what stands out to you in these numbers?
Yes, as you said, South Korea's producer prices continue to stay sluggish in May, but nevertheless, it did not fall. And if you look at the numbers, the price index came in at 101.98 in this month, nearly unchanged from 101.93, so slightly rising a bit. The main reason for that is because of the food prices. The farm products prices were up, added about 2.7% year-on-year growth, showing about 122.96. Clearly, the agricultural and livestock and fishery products all rose because of the increased consumption that was followed by the government's provisions of emergency relief funds. You already know that most of the Korean household received about 1 million won, about US dollar of $822 each. And some of these monies were spent, clearly affecting positively in terms of the prices. And so far, the government have used 12.7 trillion won out of the total package of 14.3 trillion won, and that was distributed to the individuals of Korea as end of May. So maybe the number is now too small to support this kind of demand. I think the government is trying continuously to do additional boosting measures in order to sustain the consumption until the export recovery comes through in the future. So far, as you already know, the global economy is shrinking, somewhere between 2 to 4% negative growth rate, and that affects negatively, obviously, an export of Korea. So we need to cover that up with a strong consumption, and clearly these boosting measures by the government is very important. And government has vowed to continue to do boosting measures in order to keep the economy going.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thanks so much for sharing your insights. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The number of people living alone in South Korea increased last year, reaching a total of more than 6 million households, a record high. This was mainly down to people getting married later and more older people living alone. Yoon Jung-min reports.
The number of people who live alone in South Korea rapidly increased last year, while 4 out of 10 remained unemployed. The number of one-person households in the country tallied at over 6 million as of October 2019, jumping 4.3% on year. The number of single-person dwellings made up almost 30% of all households, up 0.7 percentage points from a year ago. Statistics Korea said the figures increase because younger people who live alone tend to get married relatively late, and there are more older people living alone. The data show that among those people, around 60% were working, while the other 40% were not. This is because those over the age of 60 make up a large proportion of the single-person households, and they tend to be unemployed. By age group, people aged between the ages of 50 and 64 accounted for the largest share with more than 27%. Meanwhile, the smallest was people over the age of 65 at just 11%. Those who have worked for at least 1 hour a week were counted as employed, regardless of their age. Most ran businesses or worked in public service sectors, followed by wholesale, retail, and food sectors. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
From Wednesday, people in South Korea will be able to use a digital version of their driver's license on their smartphones as ID. The service was developed in collaboration by the National Police Agency and the country's 3 mobile carriers. It'll be available through an existing identity authentication app called Pass. Initially, though, it'll only be allowed for use at convenience stores run by CU and GS25. This will be South Korea's first digital version of an official ID. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order temporarily halting new work visas for highly skilled workers until the end of the year. The order suspends visas in the H-1B, H-2B, H-4, J-1, and L-1 categories, which will affect tech firms and students, among others. The Trump administration says the move is to protect American jobs amid the economic downturn caused by the pandemic. But many tech firm executives warn that the restrictions could hurt the country's ability to compete in key industries. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.